Hey, thank you for joining us today. Thought I would do a little something different for you. In the next 2, 3, 4 weeks, we're going to be doing a brief series and talking about manhood. Now, within this series, hopefully each week I can bring you two guests. Today we have my buddy Justin. He was unfortunate enough to stop in the building today, so I snagged him. So we're going to have a little casual conversation, and as a matter of fact, we'll call this Conversation with Craig. So we're going to talk about manhood and what it means to be a man, and we're going to look at some scriptures. Along with interviewing one man each week, I'm also going to try to get a woman's perspective. So hopefully by next Tuesday, we'll have a female's perspective on the subject that we're talking about. So tune in for that. Now there could be some variation each week, as sometimes COVID may affect who I can have on and who may be available. So just bear with us. But again, thank you for tuning in. Hopefully you'll get something out of this. We may talk longer than what we expect. So don't press stop. Just watch us. I'm sure you'll be very entertained. Justin, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
You know, what I want to talk to you about today is, just basic manhood. I want to get started off here, and I really wanted to go back to Genesis. We see that Adam and Eve was right there in Genesis, and Adam was created first. And we see in Genesis chapter 2 that God kind of seen that Adam needed a helpmate. You ever need a helpmate?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, me too. And even when I don't need a helpmate, sometimes I just want my wife in the room. You ever do that?
Yeah, that helps.
My wife's like, why are you doing that? Why am I out here watching you?
Or just as a sounding board.
That's exactly right. Yeah. It's there's something about it. Even if they're not helping you physically, just having your spouse there or your loved one there, it does make a huge difference. But we see that God seen that Adam needed a helpmate, which was quite obvious. But as he had created the earth and Adam was trying to name the animals, he caused Adam, of course, to fall into a deep sleep. And I'd like to be in a deep sleep sometimes, wouldn't you? Yeah, get a little rest. So out of that deep sleep, we see God created that helpmate, which he called the woman. So, you and I here today, and we're going to talk about some things. And really what we're going to cover today is we're going to talk about, as a man, how man first sinned and what briefly led up to that. So we're going to talk about that. So what do you think? In your own words, is men without sin today?
Definitely not.
Definitely not. I struggle with it every day. I'm sure you do too. Between our workplaces and, listen, being a man is difficult. And I don't know what really makes a man. So hopefully exploring this series, we'll all figure this out together. But, society tells you got to be a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
Your workplace tells you've got to be a certain type man.
Yep.
And then your wife has expectations of what she wants you to be as a man.
And your kids.
And your kids. And even when you roll into this church building to worship and to Bible study, they expect you to be a certain type of man. For some of us, worship is work. There's a lot of things going on. So we've got to juggle that. And I know you yourself back there in the sound room, you're always very busy with Mike and a lot of things going on. So you're juggling lots of different things.
Yeah, it's hard sometimes because I feel the obligation, to help out back there. But then my wife has the kids to wrangle during service. So it's hard. It's hard to juggle that.
I can understand that. And all the roles us men play in our lives each and every day is difficult. And sometimes it's hard to switch off those roles.
Yeah, very hard.
And know when to switch off those roles. And even coming in from work, sometimes it's difficult to change those roles into what your kids or your wife expects.
Yeah, it's hard to leave work at work sometimes when you walk in the door.
It really is. And even thanks to modern day technology, work is almost with us all the time.
I leave my work phone in the truck,
all smart
so
guy.
I'm not tempted.
Well, my work phone is my phone. And
maybe you should get a second one.
If you're watching this video, you're probably sure to text me about something. So, I know I just can't get away sometimes.
Yeah.
But we saw God's looking at man that he created. And, I think about this a lot. I think about being a human and how awesome God is. And, you know, I think about my own body, my vision, my smell, my touch, how awesome God really is. So God was very intuitive in seeing that man needs some help. So Adam was trying to accomplish all these things, so he created a woman. So here we have a helpmate. And it's very important to understand that in today's world, our roles seem to be shifting. Lots of times women are confused about their roles, and I think men are confused about their roles as well, don't you?
Yeah, there's a lot of societal pressure to break down or break apart those traditional gender roles.
Yeah.
And, you know, certainly you can have a conversation about women's rights, and, you know, and that's come a long way in that regard, which is a good thing.
Absolutely.
But, you know, just biologically, men and women, they have different proclivities. There are certain things that we're just naturally geared toward that we do better. Men are providers, women are nurturers, and, you know, by default, that makes them great parents, you know, great for child care.
Amen. Well, I appreciate that perspective. And as a matter of fact, as we go on with the series, we'll dig into that a little bit more. So what I want to beat you up over today is this.
I haven't been beat up yet?
Yeah. Well, it's going to get a lot worse, my friend.
Oh, boy.
Here we've got Adam, and now we've got a helpmate, which is awesome. I sometimes have joked I'm a little codependent. I like to have friends such as you in my life. I like to have my wife in my life and my kids. When I'm by myself, bad things happen. Or I just get lonely. I like that, and I'm appreciative of how intuitive God was. But you know, in Genesis chapter 2, there in the beginning, we see God had created lots of awesome stuff. As I mentioned, my body, I think, is just amazing. And we can look out these windows over here and see great things that God has created. And so that's what they were talking about early in chapter 2. All the great trees and the awesome things, but there was one thing God had mentioned. You see, down in chapter 2, verse 9, the tree of life.
Mm-hmm.
So what did God say about that? I think you know.
Yeah, don't eat that fruit.
You know what? It seems simple, doesn't it? You've got the perfect utopian place, the Garden of Eden. And right now, with some of the things we're going through, I think in my mind, man, how awesome. They didn't have to labor, didn't have to do God was providing everything. And not only was he providing everything, it was beautiful to the sight. So how perfect was it? And when you look at what we're going to talk about for just a second, what happened when women and men sinned? It was so quick.
Mm-hmm.
It was so quick. So that's something maybe we'll discuss in a second. We see in the first part of Genesis, in chapter 3, verse 1, we see the serpent appear on the scene. And in that particular verse, we see the serpent was very cunning. I'm sure you saw a snake in your yard before.
Oh, yeah.
And they kind of slither and can hide and surprise you a little bit. That's kind of how sin is, isn't it?
Yep.
Just kind of comes up on you. What we're going to look at particularly, though, is how this happened. The first one to sin was the woman. Satan tricked the female, which sometimes we do say is a weaker vessel, as the scripture points out. That does not mean women are weaker. I don't need any text. That's not what this is about.
Too late.
Yeah, no, whoops. But the woman, the Satan cunningly conned her into partaking of the tree of life. I believe she even mentioned in those verses that they were not supposed to do that.
Right.
But very quickly she done it. And on down, I think I got my notes over here in chapter 3, verse 3. They knew not to eat it. But very quickly, I think in verse 6, she ate it. And within a few words in the same verse, guess what else happened?
She had tempted him into eating it.
Adam ate it too, man,
Yeah.
just like that.
Mm-hmm.
So here's some of my questions to you. Here's what we need to talk about. And there's no way we can find the answer to this right now. But how does that happen? How does man, in your own words, how does man fall for these things? Now, we see a woman cause the man to sin. Now, it's just right there in the Bible. How does that happen? I can tell you personally, I've had women in my life cause me to sin many times. It's not their fault. I made the choice, but I was just as quick to sin as Adam was.
Mm-hmm.
And later, I was very remorseful of that, or whatever it was to happen. It may have been the most simplest of things, but very quickly I was caught into that. Why do you think that is?
I mean, part of it, fear of missing out,
Yeah.
maybe, want to try what others are doing, don't want to be left out or seem like you're, not part of the group.
Yeah,
Um,
I like that. And
or maybe he knew, I mean, they knew there were consequences for their actions. Maybe he didn't want to lose her.
yeah,
Maybe he thought, well, whatever happens
like
to her
that.
should happen to me. But ultimately, like you said, he made the conscious
he
decision
made
to
the choice
sin.
to do that. Didn't
Yeah,
he?
yeah.
We also have to look at this too. I can tell you, even in high school and college years, you find people you're attracted to. You find ladies that you're attracted to, and sometimes men do dumb things
Mm-hmm.
for attention or to have that woman in their lives. They will maybe go out of bounds or do things that normally they would not do because they're attracted to that lady.
Right.
I've seen people that I've known risk their own lives or maybe do something to harm another individual because quote unquote attraction, and maybe we see that here in Adam a little bit, but it's just so amazing how quickly he fell for that.
Well, that's something that's been studied a lot about human psychology is groupthink. You tell a person they're a part of this particular group, they will very rapidly fall in line
Oh, that's
with the
right.
belief systems of that group. It's
Look at everything Adam had. I mean, the one thing, I mean, it's just amazing to me that he risked everything, even life. I mean, he would have been there forever, and then he not only was punished. We're all still punished to this day
yeah.
because of that sin. So sin has consequences. So here we are, many generations later, paying for that. So the last final question I want to propose to you is, just thinking in your own words. As we've already mentioned, we still do this today. We still sin today and fall for these things. And it's not because of a woman or whatever. I sin. So what, maybe in this circumstance, or what can we do? Can you briefly explain maybe what can we do to help prevent that?
Well, obviously, trying to keep in line with the teachings of Christ, keep that, forward in your mind, even as you go through your menial task for the day, that can help you keep in line. But the other thing to remember is, you don't truly appreciate certain things in life unless you've been through hardship. When you go through a hardship and you come out the other side, better for it a lot of times, and that really helps you truly appreciate what you do have. And I think that's Adam and Eve probably didn't understand what they had there in the Garden of Eden because that's all they'd ever known. We see spoiled kids all the time.
Right.
You say, man, they don't even know what they got. And I think that's kind of how it was with Adam and Eve.
Oh, that makes a very
So
good point.
I think when you, because we're all going to sin, like you said, we all do it a little bit every day. But I think when you sin and you're in those hardships, just kind of embrace that and focus on what you need to do to get out of that and better yourself, and you'll come out the other side better for it.
I like that. And as God seen with man, the reason for creating a woman is he needed that helpmate. We as men have to have the courage enough to tell our friends and loved ones when we're maybe struggling with sin or about to struggle with sin, or we're just so deep in it that we don't know how to get out.
Right.
And as men, we need to have that conversation. I think through the ages, we think we can't have those conversations, but we can. Certainly, as Christians, we know we should. We to bear each other's burdens, and that's part of being a helpmate and being surrounded by Christians.
That's one of the pressures of society, I think, for men particularly is, you're just supposed to grin and bear it, get through it, do what you need to do, and basically, not show any emotion. But women naturally gravitate towards each other for support. That's one of their strengths, and that's one of our weaknesses as men.
They always go to the bathroom in pairs. What? That'd be another.
That's a whole nother video. But we're not like that. We don't tend to gravitate towards each other for support. We tend to want to try to fix it ourselves.
Yeah. That actually describes me perfectly.
Yeah.
We
Me too.
usually don't ask for help until we're broke something or it's just almost too late.
Yeah, exactly.
So, listen, we're going to finish up today. Is there any other input you'd like to have on anything that we've talked about?
I think I'm good.
All right. Well, I appreciate you joining me today, and hopefully you've got something out of this, and look forward to the upcoming weeks. And women, as you watch this, take no offense. We're using the scriptures, and we're going to be looking for your input as well. If you're watching this today and you have some input, I'd like for you to join me here. I'm hoping to grab someone on Sunday, and we'll maybe have some casual conversation about what Justin and I have discussed today, and get the other perspective. I think that's fair. Thank you for joining Justin and I today. I'm Craig Embry with South Trail Church of Christ.